Directors General, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to read out the general report of our session that lasted 3 days. On the 17th, 18th, and 19th of September 2019, at the Monfebe Hotel in Yaoundé, an international conference was organized by the National Agency for Employment in Mali, ANPE, in collaboration with the National Employment Fund of Cameroon, the NEF, with the support of the Executive Secretariat of the World Association of Public Employment Services, WAPES, on the theme Employment, Youth and Migration, What Challenges and Opportunities for PESs. This conference, coupled with the 20 years celebration of ASEP, had 5 major articulations: the opening ceremony, the signing of a partnership agreement between the National Employment Fund and MAPE of Chad, the Conference of Directors General of PESs, thematic roundtables, and the closing ceremony, in which we are. The opening ceremony was presided by the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training of Mali, and he was accompanied by the Director General of the National Employment Fund of Cameroon, Honorary President of WAPES, and the President of the African Association of Public Employment Services, ASEP, the Executive Secretary of WAPES, and the representative of the ILO Central Africa Office. 152 experts participated in this session representing 17 countries. In alphabetical order: Belgium, Benin, Cameroon, Congo-Brazzaville, Congo-Kinshasa, Djibouti, Spain, France, Kenya, Mali, Morocco, Mozambique, Niger, Sweden, Chad, Togo, Tunisia. Representatives of international organizations were equally present in this meeting, and even representatives of trade unions. 4 presentations marked the opening ceremony: the welcome address by the Honorary President of WAPES, Director General of the National Employment Fund, Mr. Mute, a general statement by Mr. Ibrahim Aknok, a statement by the Executive Secretary of WAPES, Ms. F. Marie Musirai, and the opening statement of the international conference by the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training of Mali, Barrister Sidibe Jean-Claude. Welcome statement by the Honorary President of AMSEP. The Director General of National Employment Fund expresses gratitude of the National Employment Fund to the Cameroonian Head of State, His Excellency Paul Biya, for enabling for authorizing the holding of this meeting in Yaoundé. Then he thanked the Executive Secretariat of WAPES and the Director General of the Malian ANPE, President of WAPES, for the joint organization of this international workshop with the presence of the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training from Mali. He equally expressed his gratitude to all the other international representatives, as well as his other Director Generals of PESs who came. After his statement, he presented the socioeconomic context of African countries with low unemployment rates according to ILO. But this low employment masks the realities of underemployment and other issues of migration from other countries to different destinations. In this regard, PSC should think on how to guide this phenomenon. Hence, the interest of this workshop on the theme Employment, Youth and Migration: What Challenges and Opportunities for PESs. He expressed the wish to see the discussions in this workshop to bring concrete solutions for youth employment in Africa. In building stronger links between PSCs, he announced the signing at the end of the ceremony, of the opening ceremony, of a partnership agreement between LAPE of Chad and Cameroonian NEF. He ended his statement by announcing that this meeting was coupled with the celebration of the 20th anniversary of ACEP, which represents a moment to assess the grounds gained and see how to strategize for the future while have taken a break to strengthen human relationships. The president of WAPES, Mr. Ibrahim Aknok, after thanking the Cameroonian government and the National Employment Fund, who accepted to host this conference, talked about the issue of employment in Africa, which remains worrying looking at statistics available. He declared that in the face of this situation, it is up to PESs, among others, to sensitize business owners in our various countries to bring solutions to the issues of unemployment, of youth unemployment. And then he announced that the 3-year plan of WAPES, validated in 2018, focuses on the promotion of youth employment and strengthening cooperation between African PESs and that of other regions across the world. He magnified the friendship between Mali and Cameroon that dates to many years back after independence by the strong will of the founding fathers of our two countries. He ended his statement by a brief balance sheet of the activities of WAPES, which in 20 years went from 6 to 20 members, including Mozambique this year, and with many workshops organized. He saluted the foresight of the founding fathers of ASEP and called on participants to give a standing ovation to Mr. Amute, who is one of the founding fathers of ASEP. Statement from the Executive Secretary of WAPES. After apologizing for the absence of the president of WAPES, who couldn't travel to Yaoundé, the Executive Secretary reminded the grounds covered by WAPES for 30 years. Please, the Executive Secretary is a woman, just for as a reminder. Going from 6 members from the beginning to over 80 members today in the 5 regions of the world. She appreciated the dynamism of WAPES and the Africa region and announced that the challenge is to accompany the implementation of the new long-term strategy of WAPES that was validated in 2018. She later noted that WAPES has other partners like the ILO, OECD, the European Commission, and many others, with whom we need to collaborate more than in the past. Regarding this meeting, while wishing a happy anniversary to WAPES, to APES, she wished us fruitful deliberations. Opening statement of the international conference by the Minister of Employment of Mali, Barrister Sidibe Jean-Claude. After appreciating the previous speakers for their lovely words addressed to him, the Malian Minister of Employment thanked His Excellency Paul Biya, President of Cameroon, for accepting to host this important international activity in his country. He then thanked WAPES, who, during its 11th Congress in February 2018 in Marrakesh, in Morocco, confided to Mali through ANPE a 3-year mandate to the Vice Presidency of WAPES for the Africa region. Regarding the conference, the minister saluted the pertinence of the theme and said the close links between the issues of employment, of youth employment, migration across the world cannot be overemphasized. Public employment services in their strategy should mobilize to contribute for better social inclusion of migrants in their countries of origin and host countries. So it was important that WAPES and its partners should ponder on these issues to equip PESs to bring to government and migrants adequate solutions. He continued his statement with some strategic information on Mali, which in 1998 adopted its national employment strategy, followed in 2009 by its vocational training policy, and in 2014 by its national migration policy. To justify the impact of migration in their countries of origin, the minister underscored that the contribution of Malian migrants and its diaspora was evaluated at over 598 billion CFA in 2018. That is greater than the official development assistance. As for the other aspect of this meeting, including the celebration of the 20 years of ASEP, the minister congratulated the bearers of this initiative, saluted the vitality of ASEP and the contributions it has made for our country, to our continent. He ended his statement by wishing fruitful deliberations during the conference and wishing a happy anniversary to ASEP. So, as I was saying a while ago, the opening ceremony ended and there was the signing of the partnership agreement between ONAPE and the National Employment Fund. The National Employment Fund was represented by Director General Mr. Kami Mute Abidias, ONAPE by its Director General Mr. Faisal Hussein Abakar. The latter made a short statement in which he appreciated the solidarity between ASEP and AMSEP. He thanked the Director General of the NEF for accepting to accompany ONAPE and ended his statement with wishing that the deliberations should be fruitful. Third articulation, the Roundtable of Directors General. When the working session resumed, a conference on the theme, the pertinence of the mission of PESs in the employment, was moderated by Mr. Alain Bilibi, Director at the National Television of Cameroon, moderated, and the speakers were the Director General of National Employment Fund and the Director of ANPE of Mali, Mr. Cyrano Afidiombolo, Le Boxo, Himo Specialist ILO, Mr. Solomon Kone, Ms. Ngor Janine, Director of Legal Affairs in the Ministry of Employment and Vocational Training in Cameroon, with the participation of Directors General of the following countries: Togo, Chad, Tunisia, Benin, Mozambique, and the Honorable Nyanga Enenge, former President of WAPES. All these panelists acknowledge the pertinence of the mission of PESs, and after discussions, the following recommendations were made. PESs must unfailingly and tirelessly support government strategies that have been put in place to promote employment and seek government support to provide PESs the budgets they need. Every PES must constantly question himself on the degree of satisfaction of his action towards the target public. The role of PESs must go a little further upstream by the construction of synergies with the educational system in relation or in compliance with the market needs. PESs should establish real actions to digitalize their services to match technological advancement. Communication strategies must be well thought and oriented to communicate on programs and pertinent innovations, to improve the quality of service and make our PSCs known by the public. PESCs must seek funding to to fill up the low budgets they have, and all this must pass through the capacity of formulating in an attractive and convincing way our needs to our partners. The pertinence and performance of our actions must be supported by the permanent capacity building of PESCs in human resources. And the last recommendation: promotion strategies of PESCs must be continued and strengthened by PESCs, because it is in creating and developing many countries that many jobs are created, and hence the functioning of our labor markets is improved. Fourth part: thematic roundtables that lasted 2 days. We start with that of 18 September 2019. Roundtable number 1, on the issue of youth unemployment worldwide, and in particular, and Africa in particular, within the context of globalization, was moderated by Mr. Edmond Amusu, Director General of ANPE Togo. After presenting by turn the various speakers, and before giving them the floor, he laid the problem of this theme, that is the impact of globalization on youth employment. From the statement of Mr. Sirani Afidi Ombolo, HIMO specialist, after the situational analysis of the state of unemployment in Africa, two main problems were revealed: underemployment, that is close to 80% in many African countries, and the mismatch between training and employment. In the face of this situation, he said there are 3 challenges to pick up: economic growth in productive sectors that can lead to sustainable development and job creation, the development of development policies that are compatible with with jobs, and the migration from informal economy to formal economies. Mr. Tinga Yepdo Joel Mathurin, second speaker, Assistant Research Officer at the Department of the National Institute of Statistics of Cameroon, after justifying the issue of unemployment in Africa and defined some concepts, it was revealed that the causes could be from within: inefficient institutional mechanisms, or external technological innovations. He thinks that unemployment should be dealt with at the sub-regional and regional levels, looking at capacity building and professional mobility that globalization offers. The third speaker, Mr. Juvenal Arcanjo Dengo, Director General of INEP Mozambique, for his part, presented the strategy of job processing in Mozambique through the National Institute of Public Employment of Mozambique. This strategy focuses on vocational training, integration into companies, and youth entrepreneurship. This strategy is beginning to bear encouraging fruit despite the morose economic situation. This roundtable was ended with questions and answers between the speakers and the participants, with one of the most pertinent being to encourage companies to use. The moderator, Director General of Togo, concluded the working session by recommending PESs to draw from globalization to promote jobs in our countries. Roundtable number 2, moderated by Ms. Françoise Belinga Bibi, on the theme: the regulatory and legislative framework for migration worldwide in Africa, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. After presenting, the speakers said the stakes of this roundtable was the impact of the evolution of regulation on migratory phenomena. She gave the floor to each speaker. Mr. Isham Arud, first speaker, National Technical Assistant at the Belgian Development Agency, Enabel, in his statement talking about Morocco, said that Morocco has a reform of its migratory policy for a better integration of migrants and refugees. The management of migratory flows according to a global policy approach. This policy revolves around strategic objectives that are related to the respect of mankind and institutional guidance. And as an illustration, he cited the Amudu project, whose objective is integration and management of migrant flows, whose actions are summarized in capacity building of all stakeholders in the care for migrants and refugees. As for Mr. Joseph Njue, head of Migration Department and Labor at the NPE of Kenya, he noted that one of the causes of youth migration is the quest for better working conditions. He recalled the principal destination of Kenyan migrants, including the Middle East, Europe, United States, and Africa. Under the framework of the East African sub-region, there is free movement of people and goods, and this includes the harmonization of employment policies. Kenya has ratified many ILO conventions, signed bilateral agreements with some Gulf countries to govern migrant workers. The fourth presentation was that of Elena Fanetti, Program Officer, Governance Team at the European Union Delegation in Cameroon. In her statement, she affirmed that legal migration, including labor migration, are part of the global cooperation of the European Union with third countries to avoid risky movements to Europe and other faraway countries. Alternative solutions have been created in partnership with the countries of origin of these migrants, that of creating jobs and increasing investments. A European agenda on this was set up with the possibility for legal migration. It illustrated the instruments that the European Union has developed in partnership with African countries to bring practical solutions to migration. She talked of the Emergency Trust Fund for Africa, the Joint Initiative EU-OIM, the External Investment Plan of the European Union, and the European Fund for Sustainable Development. Regarding Cameroon, she explained that the European Union is supporting stabilization efforts in the far north and east regions that are facing crisis due to crisis and terrorists. It is in this framework that the European Union set up 3 projects. The first project being that to support vulnerable youth, the second to support local economic development in the far north, to facilitate the integration of the youth, and intensification of cooperation on legal migration and mobility. After these 3 statements, there was a discussion that followed that came up with with the following ideas. Migration is a concern in the elaboration strategy for the youth for PESs. Its causes having been identified, its management passes through the consideration of the employment component in implementing African country policies and the valorization of synergy of action between states with the support of international partners such as the European Union. Now we move on to thematic roundtable number 3. The third roundtable, moderated by Yves Thomas Lundi, project head for Migration for Paul France, talked on the influence of migration on the national employment market, and the speakers were Abdel Samad, head of service provision to employers at the international level for ANAPEC. Mr. Taussi talked about the positive and negative impacts of professional migration by noting some kind of secular migration that helps Morocco to help to benefit from the deficit of labor in some countries like Spain, Germany, Belgium, and the United Arab Emirates. Generally, he emphasized the mission of placement at the international level, broken down in 4 points: the quest seeking international offers, prospection, information on international jobs, training, and support for migration. Regarding the positive impacts, he cited 4: positive capacity building, transfer of funds and know-how, supplementing shortage on the market, and solution to the aging population of host countries, especially in Europe. Regarding the negative impact, he talked of the migration of qualified labor, brain drain, and shortage on the local market. To illustrate his statement, he presented 3 projects that Morocco initiated with Germany, Belgium, and Gulf states. The last and fourth speaker, Mr. Leopold Jeremy Gomezo, Director of Cooperation at the National Employment Fund in Cameroon, started by presenting the geographical location of Cameroon that helps to see where migrants come from. In his presentation, he said 92% of migrants are Africans and 8% are from other continents. He cited the 3 types of migrations that are managed at our level: internal migrations, transnational migration, and forced migration. The National Employment Fund, after setting up the PARIC program, the support program for immigrants who return in 1998, is continuing to develop partnership with the HCR, the IOM, and OFIL for the professional integration of immigrants. He later presented the results of the various proceedings that were started with the partners mentioned above. He ended his statement with the specificity of the greatest migrants in Cameroon, including Nigeria, which are specially oriented towards the sector of Malians and Nigerians who are specialized in spare parts. Ms. Eve-Marie Mousseret, for the project Move EU, she presented the project, which is a professional integration project for migrants in an irregular situation. It is an Erasmus project that concerns Belgium, France, Germany, and Italy. The objective of this project is the integration of the migrant and the strengthening of his capacity on the labor market. This project is laid out on 10 competencies on a scale of 4 levels. It concerns an organizational, communicational, and technical pole. The 4th roundtable was on good practices between the various PESs, that is today. It had 2 parts, and it was moderated by Ms. Angelique Kikudi, Director General of ONEM DRC. During her introductory statement, she emphasized the need to share good practices so that the various PESs participating in this workshop should be enriched with the experiences of others. That is how the speakers from Sweden, Mr. Staffan Johnson, unit head, talked of management of labor of youth within 90 days. Mr. Edmond Amuso, Director General of IMP Togo, gave a presentation on the experience of ANPE. Mr. Yves Thomas Lundi, Project Head for Migration, also made a presentation on the approach of migration that PESC should adopt through the 4 essential stages. The second roundtable had as speaker Mr. Suleiman Adi Dauda, Head of Legal and Administrative Affairs Department in Niger, Mr. Joseph Njue, Chief Employment Officer, Head of Labor Migration, Mr. Sambala Sidibe, Head of the Training and Employment Promotion Department at ANP Mali. As a whole, these presentations was experience sharing and a lot was said. And as the president of WAPES said, at every workshop in Mali, they start a new program. So participants were encouraged, PSCs were encouraged to strategically consider these information received and make good use of them. At the end of this session, the last phase concerns the closing ceremony. But before this closing ceremony, it is worth reading the resolutions arrived at. Participants in the Yaoundé International Conference made the following resolutions. First resolution: the staggering increase of unemployment in our countries and the increasing number of private placing agencies and social networks brings to light the pertinence, the duty of PESs. So it is important for PESs to be aware of this, adapt to this new situation by becoming more performant. Second recommendation: globalization can have either a positive or a negative influence on our local employment market. PESs should implement information and training programs to draw advantage from this globalization for the labor of their country. Third recommendation: the regulatory and legislative framework in the world and Africa has evolved seriously and is linked to the various ILO conventions and various bilateral conventions. It is therefore recommended that PSCs should document themselves and adapt and carry out measures to this effect. Fourth recommendation: talking about the quality of products of the educational system that is recorded in our agencies with qualifications that are far from the needs of the market, it was recommended once again during the working session of PSCs to go further in their missions by an upstream action in the market, in the labor market, by putting in place a synergy of action with the educational system. Fifth recommendation: because of technological progress and the dependency of youth on social networks, it is imperative for PSCs to align with this new era by digitalizing and dematerializing their procedures. This phenomenon, which we call in Cameroon digitalization, so a blend of physical and digital adapted for African countries. The migratory phenomenon having taken a strong proportion, the pooling of information by the creation of an information system would enable a better management of migration in Africa by PESs. It is about creating a common information system in ACEP 7th recommendation. Professional migration being a phenomenon that cannot be stopped, PESs must elaborate strategies of adaptation for their service offer to adapt to this new phenomenon, which is not even new. And last recommendation, to enable the anticipation of needs of the labor market, PSCs would have to train and encourage companies in the practicing provisional management of employment and competencies. So, Mr. President, Secretary General, this is a summary of our working session. The only item that's lacking is a closing ceremony that we will write at the end of the closing ceremony. Thank you for your kind attention.